Welcome, everyone, to this Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and tools that you can use from discussing the research, stories, and background from recognized experts and practitioners to accelerate your impact in your current role. Well, today I'm glad to be joined once again by Dr. Rick Brinkman. He was with us before, but there was such a demand for it to have him back. We're having him back now to talk about more of those difficult behaviors. Dr. Richard Brinkman, he's the developer of the conscious communication and shares human behavior insights and content-rich communication strategies. He helps organizations improve leadership performance and apply principles of the conscious communication framework to improve their bottom line results. This effective approach to communication has been delivered to millions of people through keynotes, trainings, radio, television, and print interviews, along with numerous award-winning books. One of my favorite books on the topic and an international bestseller, which has been translated into 25 languages, and a new edition's coming out soon, Dealing with People You Can't Stand, How to Bring Out the Best in People at Their Worst. Thank you, Rick, for joining me again on today's program.
It's always great to see you and talk about typical people, because if you can't laugh at yourself, laugh at other people.
There you go. And this is an evergreen topic, really. I mean, I have yet to meet the person who says they don't have a difficult person in their life. And I'm sure that goes for you as well, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. But I think of it like going to the gym, and when people are acting out, it's like a workout machine to develop your communication muscles.
Well, and this is always one of the top things for any leader to work on. When you look at successful leaders, they're always effective communicators. And this is one area of communication where you can be a new leader or a seasoned leader and you still have difficulties with dealing with those difficult people. What are the right strategies to use and how to get along with them? Because in most cases, and you identify 4 strategies in the book, but in most cases, you cannot choose to talk with them, right? And you can't just remove them from your life. In many cases, you have to deal with that person.
Right. Well, removing from your life is one of the the big 4, leave, but you might not always have that option, or you have the option, but it's not really the one you want to take because you don't want to leave the job or the relationship. You'd rather make it work.
So, assuming that you can't remove them from your life, you can't just stop talking to them. You got to find a way to deal with them. And I love your framework because you state that for the most part, the majority of people aren't difficult all the time. Now, there might be some people that are that you just have to deal with, but usually in certain times when they're not stressed out, they're more pleasant to deal with. And that's kind of that cooperation zone. And you identify 4 intents of communication, and you the sooner you identify that person's intent, the better, right?
Right. People, we have these intents within us we want to get things done. We want to get those things done right. We want to get along with people and we want to get appreciated by people. And they're always within us all the time. But depending on context, where we are, what's going on, and relationship, who we're with, one of these can become more important than the other. So, let's say I'm in some sort of business meeting and we're have to make a decision and we're going around and round and round. I'm like, okay, people, look, we got to decide how many think it's A, how many think C. I'm more in a get it done mode at that point. I'm not get along being, if you don't want to know, then we decide right now, take it time, think about it. But if I'm in get it done, then my behavior is going to be much more assertive, direct, to the point, and I'm likely to take control. If, on the other hand, I was more in get it right, then I might be, well, this is a very important decision. And so maybe we should take some time to think about it, go back to your office, crunch some of the numbers, and then let's get back together tomorrow and see what we think. And in that case, I would be much more focused on getting it right, because accuracy is the key. Now, right away, you could see, let's say there's 2 people at the meeting and maybe they have equal positional power and one wants to get it done, the other wants to get it right. They can easily see each other as oppositional, because to the get it right person, the get it done is leaping before we look and get the details. And to the get it done person, is right as a stick in the mud, dragging their feet.
That's right. And there's those 4 positive intents: get it right, get it done, get appreciated, and get along. The quicker you identify what their intent is, the better, because then you can identify communication that speaks to that intent, that purpose. And for the most part, if you meet that intent right, then they stay in that cooperation zone. There's nothing that really happens. The issue comes when they fear that that intent, that purpose is being thwarted in some way, that they're pushing for the project to get done, but it gets farther and farther behind. So then they transition from the cooperation zone to the yellow zone and then eventually to the red zone where these difficult behaviors surface.
Right. So when I was talking about control in the last example, control originates out of get it done. That's the low zone. And it's not necessarily a problem because, we could be going round and round in a meeting and somebody says, look, we got to decide how many think A, how many think B. Great. B's the way we go. Let's move forward. So I wasn't a difficult person. And in fact, the yellow zone can also be very positive and somebody else is more right. All right. Well, I'm going to research the numbers and I'll make sure we get that right. So now like we're in kind of a sports team. We might be, though we're on the same team, we might be playing different positions. Depending on our position, we have different responsibilities. Staying with the sports analogy, some people more defensive, some more offensive. So I'm one person more controlling, the other one's more accuracy, but together they do something greater. Of course, if it goes too far, then we get into the red zone, which staying with the get it done is tank. All right, people, what are you, genetic mistakes? We were working on this 2 weeks. You're already 4 weeks behind. Here's what we're going to do. Parliament dissolved. Any questions? Good. So, you can almost hear the tread grinding, and they're looking for people off task. Find somebody, boom. Somebody who gets into tank mode can rip you apart personally. And he is, it's nothing personal. It's just you're in the way of an end result. So you have to be eliminated. So really what we want to do is certainly keep ourselves in the green as much as possible, or yellow is acceptable at times. And we want to try to keep other people also in the green or yellow. However, when people go into the red zone, this is where you get, here's the big 10. You got tank attack, which we just talked about. Then you got sniping. Let me see if I can lower my IQ so I can have a meaningful dialogue with you. That could be to the face and behind the back. That's also a controlling red zone. You've got know-it-all. That's right. I know 99%. I'm happy to tell you how much I know for hours on end. Of course, I'll never listen to your clearly inferior ideas. So that's another controlling behavior. And the problem with know-it-all is they know a lot, but they shut other people down. So you miss their contribution. Moving over to the get it right accuracy area of the lens. If I look at what could be, okay, the details, what could be, and then I look at what is, and what is does not measure up what could be, then I feel helpless to do anything about it. And that's how whining starts. And then whining has a first cousin, which is negativity, which is fine. Do it your way. Don't come crying to me when it doesn't work out. All of that originates out of that original desire to get it right. But the problem with whining and negativity is it leaves the details of getting it right and they go into generalizations, and you cannot problem solve a generalization. What you also get out of the get it right accuracy area is fine, do it your way. Don't come to me when it doesn't work out. And from that point on, I say, and that's nothing behavior. Now you also get nothing if we move down to get along. Out of get along, the yellow part is approval. You want to make sure everything's okay between us. So here you get nothing behavior because if you don't have something nice to say, so I say nothing. Or you get yes behavior where people are real agreeable. Can you get this done for me on Thursday? Sure thing. And then somebody says, can you do this tomorrow? Yeah, sure. Hey, can you do that? Yeah. And I suddenly have overcommitted myself and things don't get done. Because in that moment, when I'm saying yes to people, I'm wanting to please them. And what I'm not doing is task calculations. I'm not estimating how long it's going to take. I'm not considering what's on my schedule. So it's very easy to make commitments and not keep them. If I'm in that same zone and I'm faced with a decision that could hurt somebody's feelings, then I'll think about it. Ask me later, maybe. And that's my final decision. I mean, we've all told a salesperson at some point, I'll think about it. You're going to think about it. That's approval oriented behavior. Shifting mental gears now to the get attention area of the lens, where that turns red is nobody cares. That's a problem world today. It's a government's fault. This is grenade behavior. It's a tantrum. The difference between tank behavior and grenade, the tank should be in jail, grenade should be institutionalized. but it's a level of intent. The tank means to do it. The tank takes aim, but they leave other useful people and standing. Grenade blows up in 360 degrees. You hear all the stuff that has nothing to do with the present circumstances. This is because a tank attack is demanding action, but the grenade tantrum is demanding attention. What you also get out of a need for attention is another kind of sniper, but it's friendly fire. People who like you. Hey, I never forget a face or case. I'll make an exception. Just kidding. It's that friendly teasing, friendly put down humor. There's no ill intent there, but sometimes it could have unwanted side effects. And then last but not least, what you get out of that same zone is think they know it all behavior. That's right. I'm a legend in my own mind. I think I know everything. And I'm just talking out of my hat, so to speak. And I can speak with the danger is that if people don't know really the topic I'm talking about, I can make a bad idea sound good. And before you know it, we're over the cliff and into the sea. So, we all can do some of these behaviors now and again. Some might be more often than others. And it would depend on context and relationship. Where are you? What's going on? And who are you with?
I love the model. I love the lens of understanding. I love the words that you associate with each one because it really illustrates that behavior pretty well. Now, when they move in, which you don't want anyone to move into that red zone where they exhibit these difficult behaviors, you mentioned the first thing that they need to do two things before we get into a few of these difficult behaviors. Because I want to unpack a few more. Last time we did tank and nothing person. I want to get to three or four more before the end of this episode. But you recommend blending first to remove differences, and then let's unpack that first, and then let's talk about active listening. But blending, what does blending mean, and how can someone get better at doing that? And is it just body language, or is it other things as well?
Blending is basically meeting where they are, and it's body language. It's the things you acknowledge. If you and I are wearing the same sports team paraphernalia, we're going to feel a little closer. That would be an example of blending. If we're with a little child and we come down to their level and we meet them at eye level, if we're reducing physical differences. That's an example of blending. Let's say we're in a restaurant. I look at the menu. I say, "What are you going to have, Charles?" What does what you're going to have to do with what I want? It doesn't have to do with hunger or thirst. It has to do with a feeling of rapport. If we have similar things, we'll feel closer. If you simply acknowledge what somebody says, so you say, "Rick," so we acknowledge what somebody says. You just let me know you've listened to me. That's called backtracking. When you say back what somebody says to you, that's an example of thing. If you ask me questions to find, well, tell me a little more what you mean by that. It shows that you really care to understand. That's an example of blending. And blending is not just a one-time experience in terms of people who have an ongoing relationship, whether it's business or personal. Blending is like a bank account that builds up between people. Anybody you say you trust is blended with you. Now, they may not blend right across the board. They may blend in certain subject areas. There could be somebody whose car advice you take in an instant. They tell you to do it, you do it, but you may not be taking their relationship advice as quickly. So going back to our lens, if somebody's in a get it done mode, right, and they got to make things happen, and I'm very direct and to the point, and I speak very bottom line, they're going to love that. That's going to blend with them. On the other hand, if somebody's in that get it right mode, I wouldn't just bottom line it. I'd have to go through, all right, research we did. Here's what we found out. Here's what's worked and not worked in the past. And this is why we think we should do this way. That would blend with them, give them all the details. If somebody's in get along mode and they come to the meeting a little early, I go, "Hey, how you doing? How's the family? What's happening? I heard you had a new grandchild. Tell me all about it." That will blend with them. If somebody's in that get appreciated mode and we say, "Boy, you know what? You sure bring a lot of value to this team," that will blend with them. So blending happens in a multitude of ways. It's simply acknowledging what people say. It's asking questions. It's meeting them where they are in that area of the lens, and it emulates. That's something. It's not just a one time. It's money in the bank, in the relationship bank between you.
That's great advice, and really, it's part of that active listening process where you need to listen to understand before attempting to be understood. It the steps that you have, it's listening. So what I always like to someone told me this once, it said, if you're going to listen, you want to get credit for listening. So even if you can repeat what they're saying, and if they don't feel like you're hearing them, it's not connecting. They don't feel that you're understanding them at an emotional, at an intellectual level as well. So you want to actively listen to them, and you have some great steps. If you could just kind of go over those briefly, give them an overview of those 5 steps or 6 steps that comprise this active listening model.
Well, in the first phase, you don't have to do a lot. You just want to let people talk, but you should give them meaningful looks like this and occasional grunts. Huh. Hmm. Meh. You want people to know I'm right there with you, but I'm also trying to stay out of your way. I want you to be able to get out whatever you need to get out. How long you stay at this step really depends on where people are in the lens. Everything if it's get it done, if a person's wearing that get it done, everything's going to happen much more quickly. At its other extreme, if somebody's in get it right, it's going to take a bit longer because there's details that are important to them. But one thing is certain, you know it's time to get a little bit more active in your listening if you hear somebody repeat themselves. Every somebody repeat themselves. Every somebody repeat themselves. When people repeat themselves, it's like an idiot light on your dashboard going, "I'm not sure. I'm not sure you got it." You have no clear indication people need feedback from you. So the best kind of feedback is backtracking, which you mentioned. And backtracking is simply saying what somebody says to you, and that lets them know you've listened. If somebody's more get done, it's going to be greatest hits. If somebody's more get it right, it's going to be highly detailed backtracking. And then you roll up your sleeves and you clarify to ask questions. If you clarify to ask questions, first of all, you reveal more information. But even if you didn't need the information, it's worth clarifying because now what you're telling people, I really care to understand you. And so when you put listening and caring together, this is what gives people the feeling of being understood. So we usually stay in this loop of backtrack, clarify, summarize at one point, confirm my understanding, backtrack, clarify, summarize, confirm, backtrack, summarize, confirm. And then at one point, you're going to need a lead. And so what you do is you come out of a summary with a confirmation question. Is there anything else? And then you transition. And what you say depends on the situation. Let's say it's about a problem. Great. Would you like to hear what we can do to solve this problem? And I would phrase it as a question rather than a statement, because then the person has to go, yeah, all right, let's focus on this. And you've moved them out of in this example, a problem to, all right, let's focus now on solutions. If I try to shorten this process and go too quickly to solutions, people might pull me back to complaining about the problem. And then I try to pull them over into solutions. And then they'll go back to complaining about the problem because they don't feel like they've been heard or understood yet. So this will happen very quickly with a tank. Backtrack, clarify, summarize, confirm, move forward. It'll be very lengthy with people who are whining negative because you have to break through their big generalizations. But it is a natural skill and it's a critical thing to meet people where they are and try to make sure they feel understood first.
So important. Agree with you. If people could just get that, communication would improve greatly. Just the active listening piece and the blending, probably a lot of our communication challenges would probably be removed versus trying to communicate something that you want to say. Just practicing that. I can't stress that enough. I know it's common, but common sense isn't common practice. So it's a great model to practice. And guess what? You can practice it anywhere with any relationship, at home, at work, with your kids. There's ample opportunities to practice these techniques to get better. Don't wait for the opportunity at work to present itself. Practice them because the more you practice, the more comfortable you get, and the more likely you're going to benefit from using these strategies. So let's move to some of the difficult behaviors because we didn't get a chance to go through all the ones that I wanted to last time. That's why I wanted you back and to go through some of the ones that I know everyone probably has at least one person in their life with these difficult behaviors. So the first one is a sniper, and a sniper is those persons that have a rude comment, biting sarcasm, or they just roll their eyes at you. They make a look that you kind of are foolish to other people. It's a sneaky strategy, and it's things that you should do. I'm gonna let you talk about, but what you shouldn't do when you see that behavior exhibited by others is you don't want to lash out at that person, right? I mean, saying I didn't appreciate that snide remark, or calling them out, and you shouldn't run away because they don't respect someone that runs away from the situation. Likely it's probably going to continue or may even get worse. So that's what you should not do. What should you do?
Well, it depends. Are you dealing with friendly sniping or malicious sniping?
Let's go with malicious sniping.
Before I go there, so just for viewers and listeners, the friendly stuff comes more out of that get appreciation and attention. It's the friendly teasing between friends and colleagues and so forth. There's no ill intent, although some people are not as comfortable with friendly teasing. So
Well, how do you stop that? Since you brought that up first, let's just go there. If someone keeps doing it persistently and you are really getting tired of it, how do you stop that behavior from happening in the future?
you'd say at one point, listen, I appreciate our relationship and I appreciate a good sense of humor. I have to be honest with you. I'm not comfortable with put down humor. I'm not comfortable being the butt end of your jokes. And they'll say, oh my God, I didn't realize. It's just you make such a good butt. Okay, okay, I'll be good. I'll be good. And then you get maybe a week or two of behavioral change. And your next step is catch them in the act of doing it right. When they are with you and they don't make put down humor, you say, by the way, thank you. What? Oh, well, thanks for not using the put down humor. I really appreciate that. Oh, sure, no problem. Because the friendly stuff is motivated by attention and appreciation. So if you make them aware and then you give them attention and appreciation, they will turn to that. Like leaves turn to the sun, and you'll retrain them. I know as somebody who grew up in New York City, friendly sniping is at its zenith. You want to show affection. He's not going to break your legs up, beat your head up to the bloody pulp and throw away the limbs. And he goes, "Oh, he's my best buddy." Well, I noticed it wasn't like that everywhere in the country as I went west. And even with my co-author, Rick Kirshner, he was not comfortable with put down humor. And finally, he was honest with me. Sure, I thought he was brain damaged, but, you know, I reformed. I reformed. The malicious stuff that you're talking about. All right. So this could be somebody who's holding a grudge against you. Maybe you got a promotion they think they should have gotten. Or some people are kind of curmudgeons and they're just equal opportunity snipers. They're just going to cut down everybody around them. You have to call attention to it. By definition, a sniper is kind of hiding a little bit. You got to bring them out of hiding. So let's say we're in a meeting and I'm speaking and my sniper makes a comment. I would stop right in the middle of a word. I'd stop. Slowly I'd turn. Take a breath to myself. I have to think of what to say. The sniper told me what to say. I just backtracked their comment. I heard you say a high fiber diet would bring out the best in me. What's going on? The sniper now has three choices. They could snipe again. If they do, no big deal. You just backtrack and ask again. You will never go more than 2 rounds before they back off. The sniper can come out of hiding and become a tank. Oh, what's going on? If you turn a sniper into a tank, it's actually good. Although it's more intense, but it's good because the tank is brutally honest with you. Now you know what you're working with there. And if the sniper withdraws, fine, there's nothing. You go, okay. Then as I was saying, in the group setting, you go back to where you were. However, you do want to have a next step where you circle back with the sniper and go, listen, what's going on? I want to have a good working relationship with you. And I'm wondering, what's going on? Could it be because what happened on that project a few months ago? Really, I want to know because you got to do reconnaissance and see if you can clear the air of the grudge. And sometimes it is as simple as, yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll let it go. Da, da, da. They, once you call them out on it, they let it go. In more extreme situations, sometimes we have a neutral third party involved who might have positional power. Positional power is not always good because just their positional power can force them into hiding, so to speak, where you're not going to get truth. better would be somebody who's completely neutral, who's gonna, and they're gonna talk to, and I've done this so many times, I've been hired to do this. You meet with the sniper, what's going on, da 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 da, talk about stuff. Then you meet with the snipey, da 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 da, what happened, and then you see where everybody's coming from, and then you can bring them into a room together and set a positive intent. Like let's just clear the air here so we can do the best, blah 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 blah, whatever the organization is, whatever the responsibilities are, and be the best team we could possibly be. So in a way, there's two steps. One is you do call attention to it when it happens, and secondly, you try to have a meeting and do reconnaissance and clear the air. I remember once in one IMS program, there was a psychiatric nurse who told us that first day on a new job, she met this sarcastic doctor. Couldn't believe how he spoke to her. So to give him the benefit of the doubt, she pulled him aside privately and said, "Listen, we're both professionals. We're going to speak professionally. We're going to act professionally. And you're never going to use that tone of voice with me again. Is that clear?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry." He's like, he wouldn't do it with her because she wouldn't stand for it, but he would do it with anybody else who let him get away with it. So this nurse had to attend a meeting with this doctor each week. And there was another nurse who was being a nothing person. So she wasn't saying anything. The doctor was very ruthless with her. Finally, at one of these meetings, the doctor makes a comment. The sick nurse had enough. She turns to the nothing nurse and says, "I think it's rude and unprofessional for him to speak to you this way. What I find is more absurd is you're willing to come here every week and take it. If I were you, I'd bring a loaded squirt gun to these meetings. And when he talks to me like that," and then he's like, sorry. And then the funny thing, the next meeting, when he started to become sarcastic, a couple other people went, squirt gun time. And they retrained him. They trained him out of that behavior. He did not have a specific personal grudge with anybody. It was just the generalized stress that he was under and all the things he had to do that stressed him out, that came out as sniping. Sniper can't snipe if there's no place to hide. You got to call attention to it.
And that's a great point. A lot of people, that's their default setting. Maybe it releases stress. Maybe it helps them in some way, but if it's not serving you, those are some great strategies to use. So this next difficult behavior, I know I've seen this in my life, and I know that a lot of people suffer from this as well, that everything's calm, everything's nice, but you notice, that they could be set off. Your boss, your spouse, a friend could be set off at any moment, and when they get set off, they just explode. And they overgeneralize, everything is wrong, and it's just a very difficult behavior to deal with. What you should not do is blow up at them as well. That's on one extreme. The other extreme that you shouldn't do is just quietly withdraw and hopefully get a safe distance from them. So this is the grenade. What should you do to effectively deal with this person?
Yeah, see what you just described there, the two problems. If it becomes a tank, it's going to be a little more gasoline for your fire. And then you got the tank and the grenade going at it, each one escalating the other. And at the same time, the nothing person, because a grenade is needing attention. They need some appreciation that they're not getting. And so nothing's less attentive than a nothing person who's not saying anything. So that's also like a little gasoline for the fire. You really have to jump right in and try to put out the fire. You go, "I don't want you to feel this way. I don't want you to feel this way. It's a misunderstanding." You need to wave your arms, because usually when, like, for example, with a tank, they're going to be looking at you. But with a grenade, they're usually looking away, and it's more diffuse. And with a tank, your voice volume is maybe 75% of wherever they are. With a grenade, you actually have to be louder just so they hear you. But what you're saying is words they need to hear. "I don't want you to feel this way. You don't have to feel this way. It's a misunderstanding. We can work this out." They do not like feeling the way they do. In fact, what happens for people when they do a tantrum grenade, they blow up over something outside, which then triggers them on the inside, mad at themselves for what they're doing, which unfortunately makes them angry about the outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, outside. And that's why it just keeps escalating from there. Because remember, grenade comes out of attention and appreciation. And so you're going to get some attention, but you're not going to get appreciation for blowing your cookies over everybody else in the meeting or at home or whatever. So I don't want you to feel so you don't have to feel this way. It's a misunderstanding. You raise your volume and then you lead. Blending lets you. That's right. Let's just take a moment. Take a few minutes here. Now, don't tell them to breathe. Don't tell them to calm down. You breathe, you calm down. Blending lets you lead. We come into the ballpark with our volume, we wave our hands, we say the words they need to hear. That's all blending. Then we lower our volume slowly, we slow down, we take a few breaths, and then we lead to let's take a time out here. Let's just take a moment, get a drink of water, and come back in 5 minutes, and then we'll talk about this again. You want to create some kind of timeout. Uh, and of course, you and everybody else in the room is going to be very happy for that. But you're really doing it for the grenade's benefit, because if you can give them a moment, they're going to go, okay. And they'll pull themselves together. Grenade is not a tactic. Tank attack can be a personal tactic to get something to happen, but a grenade is not. It's an emotional flare that just gets out of control. So this is just putting out the fire the moment it happens. Now, we haven't really done anything about the behavior yet. And if you know somebody in an ongoing relationship that matters to you, whether it's business or personal, then what you want to do is circle back around. And at one point, when we're all in the green zone together, they're not in the red being a grenade, you're going to do a little reconnaissance. So you'd say, hey, I was just wondering, no big deal, but at that meeting, you be real casual about it. No big deal, even though it was a big deal. No big deal, because you want to make them feel comfortable about talking about it. No big deal. I was just wondering, what's going on for you? Just curious. And maybe they say, nobody was listening. I hate when people don't listen. Now, you may know people are listening. You were listening. You don't bother telling them that. What you want to dig is deeper. Okay, how would you know if people are really listening to you? And how do you know when people are not listening? Because if people were not listening, but people were, then that means their behavioral definition, the behaviors that equal listening in their reality, did not get demonstrated, or some behavior that means non-listening did get demonstrated. And this concept of behavioral definitions is one of the big significant things that creates conflict between people that doesn't have to be there. My co-author and I once discovered that we had totally opposite strategies for dealing with being upset. If he's upset, he wants somebody to jump in, ask him a lot of questions, force him to process through it. And if I'm upset, I want people to leave me alone. So with the best of intentions, he'd get upset, leave him alone, and he'd feel abandoned, needed somebody. I got upset. The guy would annoy me with questions. As soon as we found this out about each other, I asked my wife, how would you know if I supported you in your art career? Because she said I did, and I said I did, and vice versa in my career. Totally support for me was logistics and space. Support for her, validation. So I'm giving her logistics and space, but not the validation. She's giving me the validation, but not the space. These are behavioral definitions. You want to do it to others, you want to do it to you, but it's got to be in a way they understand. If it's not in the way they understand, you have good intentions, but you haven't quite did it yet. You always know it's a behavioral definition issue when somebody says you don't blank and you know you do. That's your signal. It's time to dig a little deeper. You got to have a conversation with them and find out, how would you know? How would you know if I would support you? Backtrack, clarify. And how do you know that I don't support you? Backtrack, clarify. Because it could be one or the other or both. It could be you're doing something that is not supportive at all, or you're not doing something that would be supportive. Behavioral definitions. There's 5 things that in human behavior that I say creates all the conflict, and behavioral definitions is one of the big 5. The others are people not listening, not being understood. Tone of voice cancels words. It doesn't matter what you say if the tone is not right. The other 2 are called intent and criteria. If you think of communication like a phone number, intent's the area code. It works best up front. Anytime you start communication with intent, it's a clear communication. A lot of times people don't state their intent, and so people misunderstand what the point is of the communication. And criteria are more details, like especially with an idea. There's always an overall intent, and there's criteria you want to satisfy. Like, It fits within the budget. It's easy to implement. It's going to be very timely. It's so you have to reveal those kinds of things. It's tone of voice, being understood, intent criteria, behavioral definitions. If you pay attention to those 5 things, you wipe out most of the conflict in your life.
That's great to know. I don't know how many people that actually do that, but that's great to know. That's the strategy to move forward with if you can do that. It just takes that diligence and just doing it again and again and being deliberate,
Yeah.
being mindful. And it's so important, like what you were saying with behavioral definitions. It's not, it's their perception, right, that you have to deal with, not the fact that, well, it's pretty clear I'm supporting you. Well, if they don't feel that you're supporting them, then you need to clarify that. Then you need to get a better understanding of what their definition is if someone were to support them so that you're not just stating, well, in my opinion, I feel like I'm supporting you. That's irrelevant.
Yep, exactly. I'd say paying attention to that in both personal relationships and business relationships are huge.
Huge. Yeah, that would be something I continually struggle with. So let's move to the next difficult behavior. I want to get through two more. One that I hear, this is probably the most common one I've heard in the last 6 months of people struggling with this one, and that's the think they know it all. They don't really know it all, but they will put on a great act. And if you buy into it, you could go down a rabbit hole or on this tangent that yields no fruit. So things that you should do versus shouldn't do. The shouldn't do is don't challenge or confront them aggressively. Their only way out is to counteract with even grander claims and louder persuasion. So that's not going to help this behavior. And then also don't give in to stretch the truth in the other direction, or you're going to lose your credibility.
Right. Yeah, think they know it all, is coming out of that attention appreciation. And they're just talking, because they need to have an extreme ego need to be the center of attention. Now, true know it all, which comes out of get it in control, really does know a lot. They have a depth of knowledge that is valid. Uh, their problem is they're unwilling to hear what others have to say. Think they know it all does not have any depth of knowledge. It's just talking because they have this need for attention. And I notice in all our surveys that we've done for our last IMS seminars, the think they know it all surprisingly, shockingly has come out higher. And I think I've been talking about with Rick Kirshner just yesterday about this and working on our book. And we think it relates part to this whole social media thing where people can get some reference structure. Reference structure is like, I heard this or I read that or whatever. And they, it's the generalization thing. You stop at 2 or 3 red lights in a row. You say, oh, the lights are red today. You meet 2 or 3 people in a bad mood. Everybody's in a bad mood today. So you read 2 or 3 things online, and all of a sudden you're speaking like you're some kind of expert on a topic where there really isn't the depth. You haven't totally researched it. You've just kind of bought the farm, so to speak, and believe it in your own mind, but there is no depth there.
I agree with you. I think also though, in social media, everyone wants to be an influencer. Everyone wants to get appreciated, known for something. So you're right. I think they read a few articles and they think, okay, now I can confidently speak on it. Now I'm going to present my case, my opinion. You go into these echo chambers, and it's self-reinforcing, but in the end, it's very superficial. There's
Yes.
not a whole lot of depth, but it's that need to impress people, to get appreciated, to be an influencer because they see everyone else doing it, and they're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and as you said, they're in a group where everybody's thinking the same thing, so it seems like, oh, well, everybody knows this, and only those other stupid idiots who believe something else.
Oh,
Uh,
you're right, and so for those think they know-it-alls, if you shouldn't challenge or confront them, you shouldn't stretch the truth in the other direction. Give us a few quick tools that or techniques that people can use to really have a better relationship with them.
well, you could be curious, like, okay, oh, that's interesting, and what makes you say that? Uh-huh, and where did you read that? Oh, and who was the author of that, or what group was that? And, oh, okay, and and what else? Tell me more. What else have you read in that? You would innocently ask questions to get more and more specific about where it's coming from. And what happens is you hit bottom pretty quick because there isn't really a depth of knowledge there. It's like, well, in my online group, da, 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 and before you know it, it kind of gets revealed that this is just a huge generalization. Uh, and if you're in a group setting, let's say it's a business setting, and we're talking about something, the danger of think they know it all. It's in a business setting is they can make a bad idea sound good, and everybody follows them over a cliff into the sea. So if you start asking questions of you think they know it all, before you know it, they go from almost specific to more generalizations, and everybody gets it that this person doesn't really know what they're talking about. They're just talking. And so that saves the group. Uh, in a relationship, personal relationship, it just kind of falls apart in front of you. At the same time, if they care about having a relationship with you, then talk about stuff that you guys agree on. Just because that's rapport, and at a rapport, you can talk about other things that are more touchy. So you just got to keep innocently asking questions, as there is no real depth to that, and then it kind of falls apart.
I like that, clarifying the specifics. You can tell it like it is. I like the other tool that I've heard you say in the past is give them a break when it becomes obvious they don't know what they're talking about. Resist the temptation to embarrass them. Instead, make them allies by giving them a way out, and therefore it will minimize the chance of putting them on the defensive. So hopefully at some point you can break that cycle by maybe gently confronting them and saying, okay, here's the truth and here's the facts that I have in a private one-on-one, but then you forge alliances instead of make enemies.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate it. You've been to so many of my seminars. You even remember the stuff I forgot to say now, which is that you're right. In the group setting, it'd be great to go, okay, but maybe you haven't. I was reading the latest issue, but maybe you haven't read that issue yet. And, oh, no, that must be the latest issue. So you try to give them a face-saving escape because you don't really want to turn them into an ally and not an adversary.
And it's all based on intent. I mean, they want to be appreciated and they want people's attention. So when you use that intent and direct it for that purpose, then you're right. It can end up being positive, even though they are exhibiting a difficult behavior to get along with. So we got time for one more, and I can't end the episode without talking about this one because this one is also always in our top three, and especially in the last year. And it's the people where just nothing is right, and they start that whining approach where they just everything's bad. They make generalizations, and they just go on, and the rant just seems like it never ends. And there's
It
certain things
doesn't
that you
end.
suggest you
You
should
should
not do. So don't agree with them. That just encourages
that
them.
gives more whining.
There you go. Don't disagree with
No,
them.
because then I have to whine more to convince you.
Don't try to solve their problems because many times they don't want that.
No, because I'll just switch to another problem.
And never ask them why they are complaining to you about their problems.
Oh, no, because I need somebody to annoy.
There you go. So those are things you shouldn't do.
All
What
right.
should you do?
Well, you should ask a lot of questions. You have to, the root of whining is a feeling of being helpless. The root of negativity is hopeless. They're really on a continuum. Okay. You start with whining, and then negativity is fossilized whining. Goes on, goes on. What's the use? Why bother? So, uh, you first of all listen to what they're saying, but then you interrupt. How do you know when they interrupt them? When they repeat themselves. Okay, because whining is going to go around these loop tapes. They're going to go around as many times as you let them. So give them one loop, but as soon as they start telling you something they already told you in this sitting, you say, "Excuse me for interrupting. Just want to make sure I understand." People want to be understood. So you're saying blah 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 blah, and you give a complete backtrack summary of what you heard so far. Then you roll up your sleeves and you start to clarify, because whining is in big generalizations, but specifics are the first step to problem solving. So you start asking questions, but then what they're going to do is generalization swapping. You'll say, "What's wrong?" They say, "Everything." Okay, but what specifically? Well, all of it. When does it occur? It happens all the time. Who's doing it? Everybody. It's par for the course. You're going to go 3 5 questions, spinning your wheels, going nowhere. That's okay. You have to resist the temptation to bail out and offer a solution. Your goal is to outlast them at this phase. If you keep staying with it relentlessly, slowly but surely, they will get more and more specific. And finally, boom, you're looking at some specifics of a real problem. And at that point, it may be very obvious to you what should be done, but you don't want to say it. You got to get them to say it. So you go, "Well, looking at it, this, the blah, 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 blah. What do you think we should do?" "Well, I guess we should." And they'll bring in something that makes such sense. you'll be amazed. Why couldn't they have said that before? The reason they couldn't say it before is human beings can only pay attention to 7 plus or minus 2 things at any one time consciously. If I'm looking at the generalization, everything is wrong, I can't problem solve a generalization. Once you get me to be specific, so I'll look at some specifics, then I can start thinking problem solving. So some people will get off the whining bus at that moment. Other people, when you ask them, well, what do you think we should do? Will say, I don't know. I don't know is your nothing person's first response on a talkative day. I don't know. This is what works with I don't knows. You say, guess, make something up. If you did know, what would it be? And you give an expectant look like this. If you want to experience the power of an expectant look, get on a crowded elevator, pick a passenger at random and go. They confess all kinds of funny things. Actually, I'm kidding about the elevator. I'm not kidding about the look. We all have a natural expectant look that follows a question. Turn up the dial about 50% on your expectant look and hold it in expectant pause. And 9 out of 10 people are whining and will go, well, I guess we should. And they'll bring in something that makes such sense. Why couldn't they say that before? Other people at this point, if they'd at that, you still have a trick up your sleeve, you exaggerate. So I remember doing a couple seminar once. A lady said, he leaves too many glasses in the sink. I said, really? How many? How often? She says, too many and too often. I said, okay, but give us a number here. She goes, oh, I don't know. I said, guess. She said, too many, too often. I said, 50 glasses a day, 7 days a week, 31 days a month. No, 3 or 4 glasses 4 times a week. Where were those numbers a moment ago? I remember talking to a surveyor. I said, how much does it cost? He says, I don't know. It's hard to say. I said, $50, $5,000. He says, oh no, 500. Where were those numbers a moment ago? I don't know. But if you exaggerate, people get specific. So if a whiner cannot think of a solution, you suggest, what if we kill everybody other department? Okay, can I help? Yes, you could help. And now you do want them to help. As a solution forms, you want to either assign if you have positional power or suggest if you don't, for them to be active in the solution process, because you want to give them a personal experience of not being helpless and being able to change something, because long term, that's going to work. I want to share an example I heard in an IMS one nurse about group whining. All right. This person was in hospital administration. She took over a group of nurses because the manager before took an early retirement because she couldn't stand these people any longer because they were such a bunch of whiners. So this new manager comes in. She goes, all right, you don't complain about anything. If you got a problem, here's the trouble book. You put your name, put the date, completely describe the problem in detail. Then write 3 possible solutions. I don't care how outrageous they are, but I want solutions. Once there are 3, I will read it. I will initial it so you know I've read it. And then I will become the champion of your idea in this hospital. And in this big column here, I will let you know exactly where it stands and keep it up to date. And people saw, if you put it in the book, think solutions, something changes. Put it in the book, solutions, something changes. The book became like a lens through which suddenly they could affect this seemingly impossible bureaucracy around them. And she told me that in a 2-month span, they transformed from a team of whiners to a team of great problem solvers. Now, let's look at the book in terms of the whining strategy. She's getting them to self-clarify because they got to be specific. They have to think solutions. This is the way they can affect things, and they see how that happens. This is the whining strategy in a different form.
Oh, that's great. So love the strategies. You also mentioned too, when the people feel helpless, it's also to give them something good to look forward to. So show them the future that's maybe more positive than what they perceive. But when should you draw the line? When you say, okay, enough's enough.
Yes, when all else fails, you go through everything we just talked about. And, finally, you just have to say, all right, if you don't want to think solutions, that's fine. When you change your mind, always good to positive project. When you change your mind, just let me know. And then you end the interaction with them. And they try to talk about problems, and you hold that line. You refuse to talk problems. But if you have positional power in an organization structure, then it's also a good idea to promise some negative consequences if they now go out and whine and demoralize others. So maybe you finish the interaction with, by the way, accidents happen to people whine in my department. You know what I'm saying? You have to put this in perspective. The whining strategy I just told you, if you're sitting down with one person, it's going to take you 20 minutes easily. And you're going to have to do it over and over again. You're giving somebody every opportunity to be constructive, but you can't let them be destructive, because whining, as well as its cousin negativity, is destructive to the morale of everybody else. And so if you have positional power, you definitely have to threaten them with consequences. And if you don't have positional power, you just go, la, 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 and you refuse to listen to them. And that helps.
Well, you did mention it, so just maybe one quick tip on, you said negativity is fossilized whining. So if they continue to whine, eventually they're gonna have a more negative outlook on the world, become that negative person. Is there one strategy for those that the world is ending, doom and gloom, that you can provide our
Yeah.
listeners?
Yeah, negativity is like a know-it-all seduced by the dark side of the forest. They're sure of, uh, well, I remember one program I did, it was a small government office in Alaska, and they had a negative belief that burdened them. Oh, nothing ever changes. Nobody ever listens to our advice anyway. So somebody said, let's see. And they flip it on the wall. And every time something actually changed, they wrote it on the chart. Time someone listened to their advice, they wrote it on the chart. Before you knew it, 1 became 2, became 4, became 8. Before you knew it, your walls were papered with changes, and the attitude in the office changed. Because you can be winning and think you're losing if you're not keeping score. If we're just in the moment now, remember, you only have 7 bits of attention, and you have your reticular activating system, your radar. So if I have a belief everything's wrong, then I only notice everything that's wrong, and I delete anything that is a counterexample. But this is the power of visual communication. It's twofold. One is it remains over time. And second, you see totality. So the totality of all those counterexamples remaining over time totally crushed that generalization. I remember when I used to do Tom Peters Excellence seminars, we heard a story about the CEO of Levi Strauss, and he kept a notepad on his desk. And anytime he had any kind of success, he wrote it on the pad. It could be opened up China as a market. It could have been got my son to clean his room. It didn't matter how big or small and how personal or business, he wrote it. And anytime he found himself believing that something was fixed, he would go through that, read a bunch of things, and realize, no, that's not the truth. There is a way through here.
Great. That's great advice to end on. Thank you so much, Dr. Brinkman, for joining me. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and when the latest edition of your book's going to hit the bookshelves.
Well, we're delivering the manuscript in the next few weeks here, but I'm not exactly sure about the editing process and the delivery date for McGraw Hill, but it'll probably be sometime in the fall, is my guess. And, we are 10 behaviors, tank, know-it-all, sniper, etc. We're adding narcissism to this mix here because the world that seems to be suffering from that, and the whole online world is pretty darn narcissistic. And then we're going to have a special section on friends and family. So specifically with relatives, also a strategy how to reunite a blown up relationship, how to reconnect with people, and a whole bunch of other stuff that has evolved in the last 10 years since the third edition out.
Wonderful. Looking forward to reading that. How can they get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
Oh, well, drrickbrinkman.com, drrickbrinkman.com is my website.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure always. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share with others and post about it on social media. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which has video recordings of all the episodes of this podcast, along with bite-sized segments called single servings that are designed to answer your most pressing leadership and management questions. Remember, until next time, it's not what you know that counts, but what you do consistently that makes a difference.